Hello, I'm Jeff Braun.
Hi, I'm Ross Bentley.
And this
is No Dumb Questions.
No Dumb Questions. Okay.
Okay.
That's pretty good.
Okay. Well, at least we're having fun, and that's all that matters.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. This isn't for anybody else. It's for us, right?
Exactly. Well,
we don't post these or put them online or anything, do we? We just talk for 45 minutes or so.
I sure hope not.
No, that'd be terrible.
I'm sorry, but I know for sure I sound dumb.
Right. Me too.
Me
too.
So
the good thing is nobody listens to these, so we can talk about whatever we want.
Yeah. So what are we talking about this time? Are we talking about football, politics, space, medicine? What do you want to talk about?
I think I don't know. I don't know anything about those, and I know even maybe just a little bit about racing. So we could talk about racing. I heard everybody says you're a really good driver, so we could ask some driver questions.
I don't know.
Let's try it.
Let's give it a try. Okay.
Let's just see if you got anything that, I don't know. Maybe it's a good answer. Maybe it's not. Let's try and see. This will be a test. Okay. So I got a question for you then. Actually, I'm not even smart enough to think of the questions, but Stephen McGuire sent me a question to ask you.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask it for Stephen. Stephen says, I'm working to improve my trail braking. Thanks, Ross, for the recent posts. While I'm attempting to improve my beginning of brake and end of brake as I work on this, how can I recognize I have found the correct position within the corner to be totally off the brakes? Is this something that can only be determined by use of a data system and reviewing back in the pits?
Okay, so for every single corner, the end of braking point, that point where your foot comes off the brakes, it is 11.76 meter squared feet past the turn-in point.
All right. And that is the end of the episode.
There we go. Done.
I
don't know. I was trying to think of something very clever around the meters squared feet thing, but obviously that didn't work too good. So
sounds good. I have the answer, actually. It's when Colin was a little kid and we were working on go-karts, and he said, Dad, how tight do I tighten this bolt? I said, just right before it strips. So the end of braking is where your end of braking point should be is just right before. If you go an inch further, you crash.
Yeah. Or an inch earlier, you crash.
Right.
It could be too early, too.
Yeah. It could be too early. Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So actually, it's a really interesting question because, obviously there is a point where your foot comes off the brake pedal that I call the EOB, the the end of braking point. And that is where the end of your brake zone really is. That's the end of, one of the things that I've really spent a lot of time on with drivers, and again, so much of what I've learned to coach drivers on is because of stuff that I worked with Colin on, and just around thinking about and looking at and using that end of braking point, of that point where your foot comes off the brake pedal, and really it's the timing and the rate of release that your foot comes off as well, because obviously you come into a corner and you could get to a point somewhere, at the turn-in point, after the turn-in point, wherever it is, and you could just pop your foot off the brake pedal really quickly. That would be the end of braking point. But that's very different than if you are slowly releasing the brake pedal and your foot comes off the brake pedal there. So it's not just the end of braking point that matters. It's how you come off the brake point to that point as well. So now, it was with Colin that we really sort of define that phrase of the timing and rate of release of the brakes. So timing being, where do you start in relationship? I always kind of do it in relationship to the turn-in point. So do you start releasing the brake pedal before you get to the turn-in point? Do you start releasing the pressure off the brake pedal at the turn-in point? Do you start releasing the brake pedal after the turn-in point? So that's the timing. And then the rate obviously could be very quickly, it could be very slowly, or something in between. And that dictates the end of braking point. And there is no, it's always, 11.76, whatever's, beyond the turning point. this is one of those things where you have to sense what the car needs. And one of the things that I think is really interesting is, sometimes you come into a corner and you turn the steering wheel and the car understeers. Maybe it starts to initially starts to change direction, but then it starts to understeer. And I can go to you, Jeff, and I can say, fix the car. Or I can fix it with my driving, or try to fix it with my driving. Because in the middle of a session or middle of a race, sorry, you can't help me.
Right, exactly.
I got to do something with it. I could just complain about it, come back in and say the car is a piece of, what.
Right.
But during that moment or that time on the track, there are some things that I can do. And with understeer, if you think about what's going on there, you could think, okay, I need to keep the front tires loaded longer. So I want to trail brake more. So my timing might be, I start a little bit later, and I might even be slower coming off the brake pedal to keep weight or load on those front tires a little longer. And that could help decrease the understeer. But it could also increase the understeer.
Yeah, because this is not unlike the conversation we had in the episode before this about maintenance throttle. It's the opposite of that, right?
Right. You could be coming in there and trail braking so much that you've overloaded those front tires, and the tires are saying, "Dude, you're overworking me here. I give up. I quit." And they start to slide because of that. So therefore, you want to start releasing the brake pedal a little sooner, and maybe a little quicker. And that's why the end of braking point is not always right there. And the other part I'd say about the end of braking point is it's certainly not static, but really what it is, it's as much of a visual target as anything. And one of the things that I think is just so important is, as you're approaching a corner, and let's say it's a fairly long straightaway with a big long braking zone into a fairly tight second gear or maybe a first gear corner, hairpin corner, so you got a big long braking zone. A lot of drivers are so focused on when they begin braking, that BOB, they're so focused on that point there that they're focused on that to the point where when they go to the brakes, they hit the brakes hard and they forget why they're slowing down that corner up ahead. And the analogy I use all the time is, if you're driving down the highway or driving down the roadway and there's a traffic light up ahead that turns red, you don't look to the side of the track for a brake reference point to tell you when to start braking.
Right.
You look up the intersection and go, I need to be stopped by there. So I'm going to brake now this hard to bring it to a stop there. Well, it's the same thing. If you think about that when you're approaching a corner, is you look down into approximately where the end of braking point is. And let's say it's a fairly tight hairpin corner, typically there, you're going to want to trail brake a little bit to help get the car to rotate or change direction. So it's going to be somewhere between the turning point and the apex of the corner, where at that point back there at the beginning of the brake zone, you can't really tell. But if you're visually and kind of mentally focused on that, you're going to brake much more efficiently at the very beginning. And as you get down towards the end of the brake zone, as you're getting close to that turning point, now you're starting to fine tune your braking. You're starting to fine tune your corner entry speed. If you're kind of getting down to a car length or two away from the turning point and you're going, I feel like I'm too slow. Well, you can start releasing the brake pedal a little sooner. So the timing becomes a little sooner, maybe a little slower. So you still end up at the same end of braking point, but you started earlier and you're releasing a little slower. Or you may find that you're within a car length or two of the turning point and you're going, whoa, we're going pretty fast here. You may want to wait a little longer before you start to release. But then when you start to release, you release a little sooner, or a little quicker, a little quicker. So you're coming off the pedal. So again, you get to the same end of braking point, but it's because you've changed that timing and rate of release of the brakes.
So are you trying to get to the same braking point with different speeds, or are you trying to get there with the same speed?
When you say braking points, are you saying
the end of braking point where you lift off the brake? You always talk about speed sensing. So you could lift off the brake at a point the end of braking point? Or is it an end of braking speed? So the point might change when you've got to the speed that you want.
Great point. And I don't mean point in a pun kind of way, but because it's kind of the end of braking speed, but it's also the end of braking rotation.
Okay.
So if I get to that point in the corner, and that point again is a moving target a little bit, and I feel like the car hasn't rotated or changed direction enough, I might just hang on to the brake pedal a little tiny bit longer, just a tiny little bit of pressure, just enough to get the car to change direction. Or if I feel like, I'm coming in there and the back end's starting to want to step out a little bit, like, whoa, I might start to release the pedal a little sooner. So the end of braking point changes depending on what speed you're trying to get to, as well as what direction change or rotation you're looking to get to as well. And, to Stephen's point about, is it something you can look at a data system back in the pits and find the perfect place?
Probably not.
No. I mean, you and I have spent, I can't count the number of hours that we've spent looking at data traces and specifically brake pressure traces. And, I mean, obviously we are biased, but Colin, his brake trace, it's almost magic what he does. And one of the things that I talk about a lot when I think about Colin's brake traces, it's the long tail. And it's that final tiny little bit of pressure where he is fine tuning that speed at the end of braking and the rotation. And that tail of where the brake trace comes off. And if everybody could see my finger right now, I'm drawing it in air here. It's if the car is rotating too much or the car is overslowed, the tail drops off pretty quickly.
Yeah.
If the car is still got a lot of speed in it and it's not rotating enough, that tail might be longer. So it's really getting to the point where you're using that in a very deliberate way to get the car to do what you want to do. And part of it is thinking about the brakes are not just to slow you down. The brakes are, and not even, a lot of people go, well, they're also for loading the front tires. Yeah, but they're also for fine tuning speed and rotation in the car. And ultimately, what they really do, if you really pay attention to that last little tiny bit of the braking, is it's a tool to help you get to full throttle sooner.
I mean, that makes sense because I guess the way I look at it, I hear drivers, I blew that corner, I missed my braking point. But if you do what you're saying, if you put the brake on at a point, whatever, you like the 3 board, you still, that's not necessarily wrong. You can use that brake pedal to adjust. If you're like, oh, that was a little too soon, so I'll just brake a little bit lighter than I normally do, or whatever. So you can kind of, I don't know, bail yourself out of a quote mistake by where you put the brake on by using the brake pedal properly all the way to the end, and you can still arrive. It would seem much easier to me to be able to adjust. You kind of get the luxury of an adjustment from the time you put it on till the time you end to get the speed right and the point right when you end braking. So that seems, I never thought of it that way, but it's kind of like you don't have to be perfect on where you put the brake on because you have some leeway to the end.
Well, and that's where, the best drivers, you don't see them lock in the brakes very much. Yeah, okay, you're watching Formula One race, you see that inside tire, poof, a little puff every now and then. And, they're pushing the limit to the ragged edge every single lap. So you see that in sports car racing where I'm not saying they're not at the ragged edge, but they have to be at the ragged edge for a long period of time. You don't see them locking up the brakes. I can't think of the last time I saw Colin lock up the brakes. And that's because I'm not saying there's a margin there, but he's making adjustments all the way along. And, it's interesting. If I walk up to Colin and I say, where do you brake for turn 3? rarely does he say, I brake at the 300 board or the 3 board or at the 350 or whatever. He goes when it feels right. And when it feels right is really when it looks right, when I'm looking down into that corner, somewhere between the turn-in point and the apex as to where I'm going to finish braking. I apply the brakes here, hard initial, smooth but hard in initial there, but get most of the braking done. I always say get 2/3 of your braking done in the first third. That's really just a conceptual thing, right? I'm not saying you do that, but you get the bulk of your braking done early in the brake zone. So then when you get down to that last car length or so of the turn-in point, you're just fine tuning and you're playing with the brake pedal and using that as a tool. And again, I think having that as a mindset of the brake is a tool to help you fine tune your speed and rotation of the car to then ultimately help you get out of the corner faster, as opposed to the brakes are meant to slow the car down and maybe to put some load on the front tires.
Right. Well, and I guess the thing while you were talking, I was thinking, okay, so that changes a lot though. That changes as your tires wear out, the track conditions. If you're behind, like in our prototypes, when the LMP3 cars are particularly really bad following a car, they lose a lot of their downforce when they follow a car. So all your braking points change based on a lot of different things, and there is no one right place.
Yeah. Or how did you get out of the previous corner? Did you get a monster exit off that previous corner, or did you get held up a little bit? Did you get a draft down that straightaway? When you get to that beginner braking point, whether it's at the 200 board or the 400 board or somewhere in between or whatever, your speed at that point could be 2, 5, whatever miles an hour different than it did on the previous lap. So if you always brake at the same place, sometimes you're going to be good and sometimes you're not.
Right. And I guess humans must be pretty good at that mentally and kinesthetically and everything else, because if they weren't and it poured down rain and you never were on that track in the rain and you don't know that you're supposed to brake at the 5, between the 5 and the 4 board in the rain, everybody would crash, right? So you're I don't know, you know more about this than me by a lot, but your body and your brain must be able to kind of figure that out.
Well, I've often said that to me, the most amazing thing that we do as drivers is we drive down a straightaway, approaching a corner, and we go, I'm going to start to brake now and slow down to this speed, and it'll work. And obviously that takes experience. There was a time where I was at Motorsport Ranch outside of Dallas with a mutual friend of ours. And I hopped into this was quite a while ago, into his Aston Martin streetcar and took him for a ride around the track. And he was shocked that the first corner I got to, I kind of just stove it into the corner and was pretty much at the limit. And he was like, how did you know? I was like, it's all these years of collecting all these sensory information. And a quick story. And remember when we were doing the Speed Seekers driver development camps? We did a lot of them at Button Willow years ago.
Yep.
We had all these kids coming out of karting who were brilliant drivers. Yep. But we had one driver we looked at the data, and I can't remember if you were there that time or not, but we'd look at the data, and his turn-in speed for turn 3 that led up into the Grapevine at Thunderhill or Button Willow, and his turn-in speed, the speed that he turned the steering wheel at, it varied like 5 miles an hour from lap to lap. And other drivers, it would be like 1-2 miles an hour different from lap to lap. And we had him do one of our sensory input sessions where all he did was focus on the sound. And he went out there and ran, 15, 20 minutes where all he was going to do was just focus on the sound of the air rushing past the car, the engine note, the tire sound, everything that he heard. And I remember him coming in and his lap times dropped like 3 or 4 tenths, but we looked at the data and now his turn-in speed was within a mile an hour, lap to lap to lap to lap. And remember he kind of like, he got out of the car with a smile on his face and he went, now I know what it sounds like when I'm supposed to turn in there. And it's like, and he does this, and it's like imitating the sound of the engine. It was like, that's the sound. So he keyed in on that, on the sound of the car, and that really, really worked for him. Now, some drivers, it's a little different. Could be just a visual thing of the everything on the side kind of rushing past. But all of those things, help us sense that speed. And, with time we go, okay, that speed, I can get away with that. I can carry that speed into the corner here. And that speed, whoa, that's going to be bad. That's going to be ugly.
Right.
So then I need to hang on the brakes just a little longer and, try to take a little bit of speed off and try to drag some speed out of the car. And, obviously if it's way too fast, sometimes that's not the best thing you can do is actually get off the brakes. To give some grip back to the tires to turn rather than just loop the thing and spin it. But sometimes it's a matter of just hanging on that brakes a little longer, taking that speed off. But you're doing that because you're focused on not just, I brake here, I turn here, I apex here. It's not like a point to point thing. It's what am I doing all the way down into here? And then that last little bit, you're in that fine tuning mode.
Right. Wow. Yeah, I guess so. Then to put the final point on it for Stephen's question, how can I recognize if I found the correct position in the corner? It's the position and the speed, and it's not on the data. You're not going to look at a data point in your data. And I guess if you pick the right corner, right, there's less consequence to maybe carrying a little more speed and finding kind of bracketing that point, right?
Well, and one of the things that one of the approaches to coaching that I use a lot of times is just, okay, all I want you to do, Jeff, this next session on the track, I want you to experiment with the timing and rate of release of the brakes and that end of braking point. Because at a certain level, again, if this is your third time you're ever going to a track, don't worry about this right now. Get consistent. But a lot of drivers, when they get more experience, they're so consistent that they're consistently slow.
Right.
And they're afraid to experiment and try something different. So just encouraging a driver to go, okay, this time what I want you to do is I want you to release the brake pedal a little sooner and a little slower. And now the next lap around, release it a little bit later, but quicker. And, so eventually you learn that every single time I do this with the brake release, the car does that. And every time I do that with the brakes, the car does this. So the next time you want the car to do this, to do that.
Right.
And so you learn that. And, we've talked about this before of you're building your toolbox as a driver. And so, the car understeers. What are you going to do about it? Well, wait to the end of the session and then complain to the engineer. Or get another car and go, I don't have an engineer. So I now I don't know what to do. So, or you can go, okay, what can I do with my driving? Well, I can change the timing and rate of release of the brakes, and which ultimately dictates where that end of braking point is, which, as you pointed out, it's the end of braking point is something that really helps you define the speed and the rotation of the car. And by the way, if you're approaching a very, very fast corner, and let's say the kink at Road America, your end of braking point, I'll tell you right now, I hate 100% rules, but this is about as close as you're going to get to one. Your end of braking point, if you're going to do any braking, and even sometimes braking is just simply a lift of the throttle. That's the same. I mean, it's slowing the car down, it's decelerating. Do it before you turn in.
Right.
Because if you turn into the kink and then brake or trail brake into it or lift off in the middle of it, things are going to get really ugly. So in very fast corners, do as much of that, and 9 times out of 10, your end of braking point should be at or before the turning point.
That makes sense.
I'll tell you, that's a very difficult thing to do when you are a race driver thinking, I got to go faster. The natural instinct is brake later.
Right. Right. Not always. Not always. I I have my quick story is that's how Dick Simon, I was engineering Indy cars, and Dick Simon taught drivers how to get around Indy. And it was really weird. It was like, okay, go down on the straightaway, lift at start finish, coast until this point, and then go full throttle just before you turn in. And they were like, well, that's easy. Okay, now lift at start finish and put on the throttle 2 car lengths earlier. And they keep moving that end of braking or end of lifting point back. And after 3 or 4 runs and 20 laps, suddenly the end of lifting point was at start finish. You just off on, and then you were flat through the corner. But boy, you couldn't lift on the entry to turn 1 at Indy. You've been there,
So I don't know if I ever told you this, but when I was at Indy in '93 and I'm, got through work orientations, going through, one day I'm walking through Gasoline Alley and Dick Simon comes walking the other way and he says, "Hey, let me tell you how to approach taking turn 1 flat." And he told me that exact same thing. And I did that. To this day, I mean, I talk to drivers about that. And, if you're approaching a very fast corner, you want to be on throttle as much as you can at the turning point. And that's a tough thing to battle because, like I said, our instinct is brake later. But in this case, no, don't. So, yeah.
It works. I had him tell me he was standing there and I was running Michele Alboreto right after his Formula One career with Ferrari 200 Grand Prix, almost won the world championship. Michele Alboreto was like, holy schmoly, Michele Alboreto. Dick Simon was a very respected guy in the Indy car paddock and knew how to get around Indy and was fast and all of that. So, but I heard, and Michele looked at him like he was from another planet. He's like, what? Really? And he's like, all right, I'll do that. And after a day, Michele's like, wow, that is the way to do it. For sure. That is the way to do it.
Well, and it's interesting that, when Alonso first went to the Speedway, he made that comment about, sometimes my brain is not connected with my foot or something like that. And I'm pretty sure that Alonso would have benefited from Dick Simon's advice. So
exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hopefully we've answered Stefan's question there. So I got a question for you, and this is going to be a fun one.
Okay.
From DJ Munoz, I think it is, says, Jeff, it seems as if every other race car driver or team owner has their own brand of wine. What made you go the coffee route? And then in brackets, it says, I'm glad you did, as I love the Bali Blue Moon roast. Love you guys. So why coffee, Jeff?
Well, because I don't know how to grow grapes. No, not really. It's kind of, I liked machines. I liked espresso machines. They were kind of cool. I wasn't really a big coffee drinker, but when I got I started drinking coffee and some espressos, and then I thought, wow, boy, you can do this at home. And I got an espresso machine, like a real kind of like, not like a K-cup machine, like a real coffee machine where you grind your beans and put the portafilter in there and run the water through it, pick your pressure and temperature. And it was like, okay, well, that tastes terrible. I'll change this water temperature. Oh, that's better. And I'll grind a little different. Oh, that's even better or worse or whatever. And it was very much like car racing and like race car engineering. You were adjusting components of the coffee and the process that you made the coffee to get a result. And a lot of results were subjective. Like, I like that. Another person might not like it. And I didn't think of it in this depth, but when somebody's asked me that question, I always end up thinking, it's not unlike engineering race cars. You have a driver, he is subjective to how he wants the car to handle. The same way a coffee drinker likes some kind of coffee and not other coffee. It's what's good for one is not good for the other. And I can adjust the parts of the coffee to influence how it tastes. The same way I can adjust the parts of the car to influence how it handles. And then you could actually put some data to it where you measured the coffee machine I have has a data acquisition system basically that measures the temperature, the pressure, the flow rate, the rate of extraction in milliliters per second. And you can adjust all of that. And as I adjusted those, I found out what made it taste more bitter, what tastes more sweet, and then you could look at the data and go, well, that one's going to be bitter and that one's going to be sweet. Not unlike a race car, we go, yeah, no, that car is pushing. I can see it in the data. Yeah. And then you could adjust it all. And then I took it to the next level. I thought, well, all right, but what about the beans? And so I bought a coffee roaster with a data acquisition system where I could roast my own beans and actually make the beans taste different based on the temperature rise and how I held it and how long I roasted it and what level of temperature and all of that. And so I guess it became a kind of a fun hobby because it was similar to what I did and I could apply things. And really the best answer is because there was no right answer, which is what's great about race engineering. If there was one right answer and you could just do the math and there was your best setup, I would hate it. If you could just do your math and there was the best tasting coffee, that wouldn't be any fun. But I know how to adjust coffee and coffee beans to get different flavors and tastes. The same way I know a little bit about getting how to adjust a car to get it to handle a little bit differently. And that they kind of related to each other. So it was fun to kind of learn a different thing, but apply the same techniques that I've used in racing to something else.
Well, I've noticed you've posted a few photos and things, and I've seen some of your equipment. And
yeah,
I hope you take this the right way, but you are a little bit of you like gadgets, you like cool things. So I could see you just going for it just because of that's a cool machine.
Exactly. Exactly right. I like cool machines. I like how things are, how they work and processes and things like that. So yeah, it's fun in that way. And I think I've said this before to you, I think if people have a skill or something that they do, I think we even did a Speed Secrets weekly article on it, where it's amazing how you can apply skills in a different genre to racing. If we can back this over, if you were a super good coffee roaster and coffee barista, a lot of those skills could be applied to racing, to driving and engineering. If you're a good accountant, I bet you got some skills, some record keeping skills and some other skills that you could apply to your racing. If you were you ran a small business, wow, there's a lot of skills there that if you're good at, you have processes, procedures, note taking, archival things, how to collect data on your customers and apply it to things. You're probably pretty good at that. You could apply a lot of those things to car racing on the amateur level. I kind of did it in reverse. I did racing and applied those skills to my amateur coffee stuff. But I think you find, a lot of people have some skills that they might not be really using that could make them a better driver or a better engineer or setup guy or whatever.
Well, it's interesting, I think, and you and I have both had experience with really, really, really successful business people who have come into racing and they've applied what worked in business for them. And I'm going to say some very high percentage, 90, 95% of what they apply works.
Exactly.
And then there's that other little piece that doesn't. And sometimes I hope I'm not going to insult anybody here, but it's interesting how many times we've probably both seen really successful business people come in who have been successful because they made very logical decisions. They, looked at the data, all that kind of stuff. And then in the racing world, they make decisions based on this is on their passion for the sport, and
Right.
it doesn't work out. And it's like, what happened to what made you successful over here?
Right. Fortunately, that's why those guys hire guys like me and you to keep them from being their own worst enemy.
Yeah.
On some of that stuff.
Sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes. It's, yeah. And so that's, I think, why the coffee thing was kind of cool. And I learned a lot of things that I didn't go in it to learn anything other than, wow, this is pretty cool. This is fun. But the more I thought about it, and a lot of people ask that question, it wasn't to, make money at it or anything. And I don't make money at it. I just do it for the fun of it, for some friends. And, it's enjoyable. And I get feedback too, because people will go, wow, I really like that blend. Like here, it's like the Bali Blue Moon. Okay, he really likes that. Why does he like it? Is it because it's this and this and this? Ooh, yeah, okay. Well, I could roast it a little different and extract more of that if he likes that. I could get more of that flavor that he likes if I did this with the roast profile, held it at 200 degrees C for another 30 seconds before I dropped it or whatever.
I think there's another component here, maybe. And, what I know about you is you are a learning junkie like me.
Yep.
I think you've told me that, you started learning to play the drums at one point. And, you've been some people would say you've dabbled in a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. I don't think I've ever seen you dabble at anything. When you do something, you kind of jump into it. Now you may switch and go to something else, go from right. And I think if you look at a lot of people in our sport, they are that way. I think they're the most successful ones. They're driven by learning and getting better at all these things. And whether it's a driver or a team owner or an engineer, a mechanic, I mean, you name it. I mean, they want to learn things. And, I always say, I mean, if I ever got to the point where I stopped wanting to learn something, put me in the ground.
That'd be it. Right. I mean, I think you're right. It's back to the successful businessmen that we know that have taken up racing. I've always thought that the majority of those guys, they've been super successful, obviously by definition, because they made enough money to afford race cars, which are expensive. Yeah. So they've been successful enough to be able to afford the sport. And I think I always can see that they're highly competitive. And again, I don't think many non-competitive people in business do well and make much money. So again, by definition, I think they're highly successful and very competitive. And they're drawn to racing because it is hard and it is difficult. And it forces them to learn how to get better and learn the nuances. And their competitiveness comes out. The competitiveness they're competitive to be better than they were the day before. And yeah, they want to beat their other guys on the track, but the competitiveness is, I want to get better. I want to learn more, because they've done that their whole life in business. And maybe they've kind of got the good out of that already. And they need something else to get those same juices flowing that they had when they were building their business.
So is your coffee getting better then?
I think so.
And that's all that matters.
As we're speaking right now, I'm actually roasting coffee. It's this batch is done, and it's going to be headed off to, this batch I'm roasting is headed off to Robin, your wife. So she'll let me know if it's better or not.
Well, I can tell you she really appreciates it because she loves your coffee. So I can't remember which one is she into now.
She likes Mia Mix, which is a mix of the Bali here and also a Colombian. It's a blend.
And you want to explain the reason for that name?
Because my other son Travis has a TV show at Disney called Tots, and Mia is one of the characters in there. So I have Eau Rouge, I have Triple Stint for Colin's job, and I have Mia Mix and Freddy Fusion, which are two characters in Travis's TV show.
That's cool. Well, And again, part of this is learning, but at the end of the day, it's got to be fun.
It's fun, right? Exactly. So yeah, good question.
Yeah, good fun question. Okay, Jeff, let's wrap it up. And if you have questions, again, send them to us, Instagram, Facebook, websites, stop us on the street, write it on a paper airplane and throw it across the country to us, whatever it takes.
Exactly. Right? Smoke signals, it'll work. Yeah.
Sounds good. We do have fun doing these things. So we'll keep doing them for a while until, I don't know, I guess we get bored. Or we stop getting
questions. I'm looking at the list right here. We have quite a few questions, and we need to apologize just because we haven't answered your question that's been sent in doesn't mean we won't get to it. We're kind of doing it in chronological order, but we try to make them fit kind of the episodes together. So don't be discouraged. We got a bunch of really good ones here. The problem is there's too many good ones and we can't fit them all in, but we'll get to them.
And this may come as a big shock to any of you listening to this, but Jeff has created a spreadsheet for all of our questions. And,
exactly. That's a stunner.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure next time I look at it, there's going to be graphs of which way the direction of the questions went and all sorts of things. So yeah.
Right. We'll get to that. No, wow, that sounds pretty good. Actually, I should do that.
Yeah,
it's a good
plot. And I'll go, well, how does it feel?
Right. How does it feel? Yeah.
It depends.
And that's the answer to everything. It depends.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks for listening. Keep learning, having fun.
Sounds good. We'll see you later next time. And as Ross says, the most important thing, have fun.